I'm 61 years old and something happened to me that I never thought possible at my age. If you think your life is settled and nothing exciting can happen anymore, please listen to my story. You might be surprised, just like I was. For my whole adult life, I lived quietly and properly. After my husband died 5 years ago, I fell into simple routines. I worked at my office job, tended my small herb garden, and spent evenings alone, drinking tea and watching old movies. I honestly believed that my days of being noticed, of feeling special to someone, were completely over. But a few weeks ago, everything changed in a way I never expected. It was raining that night, the kind of soft rain that makes everything quiet and calm. I had stayed late at work fixing some mistakes my co-workers had made. My boss, Mr. Harrison Caldwell, had already left for a dinner meeting, but he called to tell me his son would pick me up and drive me home. I almost said no. I don't like accepting help, especially from someone like Tyler, his son who was in his 20s. I had only met him a few times at company parties and holiday events. But when I walked out of the building, fighting with my umbrella in the wind, I saw Tyler's dark car parked right at the front door. He jumped out and ran toward me with that easy, youthful energy. He was tall and lean, and his jacket was wet from the rain on his shoulders. "Good evening, Mrs. Patterson," he said with a real smile. "Ready to go? I've got the heat on for you." "Please, just call me Victoria," I replied with a small smile. "And thank you. This is really kind of you." I got into the passenger seat, and he walked around to the driver's side. The inside of the car was warm and comfortable. It smelled like leather and something fresh, maybe cologne or mints. He checked the mirror and pulled smoothly into traffic. His hands looked relaxed, but confident on the steering wheel. "I hope this isn't too much trouble," I said, folding my hands in my lap the way I'd learned to do over many years. Tyler looked at me, and for a moment his face was hard to read. "Not at all. Actually, I was happy to have a reason to drive." At first we didn't talk. The only sound was the windshield wipers going back and forth. The streetlights made pretty reflections on the wet road, and the whole city seemed slower and more thoughtful than usual. I found myself looking at him when I thought he wouldn't notice. I watched how his jaw tightened when he focused on the traffic. I saw the small dimple that showed up when something funny played on the radio. "You've worked with my dad for a long time," he said suddenly, breaking the comfortable quiet. "Almost 20 years, I confirmed. He nodded slowly. "He talks about you a lot. He says you're basically what keeps the whole business running." I laughed quietly, feeling a bit embarrassed. "Well, someone has to pay attention to the details." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. There was something building under his calm appearance. I could feel it even before he spoke again. "He doesn't really know me," Tyler said, looking more at the road than at me. "Not the way you probably think he does." I turned slightly in my seat to face him better. "What do you mean?" He paused, then carefully drove the car into a small parking area next to a public park. The rain had lightened to a soft mist, and the blue light from the dashboard made shadows on his face. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know this is weird. I've been keeping something inside for a long time, and I didn't plan to say anything tonight. But now that we're here together, I don't think I can keep pretending." My breath caught in my chest. I wasn't sure what I expected him to say. Maybe something about arguing with his father, or maybe about work problems or a broken heart. But what he said next shocked me completely. "I've been thinking about you for a long time. I know that probably sounds crazy. You're older. You work with my dad. I understand all the reasons why this is complicated. But I've watched you at those company events. The way you carry yourself with this quality that's both quiet and strong, like you're made of something tough, but gentle at the same time. I can't explain it right. I just wanted you to know." I couldn't answer right away. I couldn't form any words at all. The rain had stopped completely. The only sound was the soft hum of the car's heater and the blood rushing in my ears, making everything feel far away and unreal. Tyler turned toward me, but he didn't reach out or move closer. His voice stayed steady, respectful, and careful. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to say this out loud because you matter, and you deserve to hear that from someone who really sees it. I felt something tighten in my chest, a pain I didn't realize was there, not just from his words, but from how deeply they shook something inside me, a truth I hadn't admitted in many years. Maybe I still wanted to be seen as more than just good at my job or reliable. Maybe I wasn't as done with deep feelings as I had convinced myself. I finally looked at him directly, really looked at him. His eyes weren't demanding or begging or trying to trick me. They were just open, vulnerable, and honest. And that quality broke something in me more than anything else could have, because it had been such a long time since anyone had looked at me that way. Like I was someone worth truly seeing. I didn't sleep that night. After Tyler drove me home quietly and politely, without pushing for any answer or asking for anything back, I stood in my hallway for a long time. My coat was still on my shoulders, and I stared at the door after it closed behind me. The house was dark except for the soft yellow lamp near the stairs, making long shadows on walls I had known for so many years. Everything looked the same as it always had, but something inside me had completely changed, and I couldn't unfeel it or unknow it. His words kept repeating in my mind, like a song you suddenly remember after years of forgetting it. I've been thinking about you for a long time. You deserve to hear that from someone who sees it. No one had said anything like that to me in years, maybe ever. And certainly not someone like him. Someone young and full of life and possibilities. The next morning, I went through my usual routine like a robot, almost like a ghost living my own life. I made coffee, fed my old cat Jasper, and opened the curtains to let in the weak winter sunlight. But even while doing these familiar things, I kept finding myself staring into space. My hands would stop moving, and my heart would flutter strangely in my chest at the memory of Tyler's voice. His eyes, his unexpected honesty at the office. I deliberately stayed away from Harrison. I felt too exposed somehow, like I was wearing something wrong or see-through, even though I dressed exactly as I always did in a neat blouse, soft sweater, and practical shoes. But I was different now. Even if no one around me could see it, I felt deeply different. In the middle of the week, Tyler sent a text message. Just a simple one. I hope I didn't make things uncomfortable. I'm really sorry if I crossed a line. I stared at the message on my phone for what felt like forever before writing back. You didn't cross any line. Thank you for trusting me with your honesty. I'm still thinking about everything. I didn't expect a reply, but one came almost right away. Take whatever time you need. Just wanted you to know I meant what I said. That evening, I sat outside on my small back porch, wrapped in a thick blanket, listening to the wind moving through the bare tree branches. I thought about love, how I used to think about it when I was young, and how the passing years had changed it into something that seemed to belong only to other people. Younger people. People still figuring themselves out. When you reach your 60s, I've learned that people stop looking at you in certain ways. You become kind of invisible, even to yourself. You fade into the background of your own life. But Tyler hadn't looked at me like I was fading or disappearing. He had looked at me like I was still brightly present. A few days later, Harrison's helper called in sick, and we were suddenly short on workers for an important lunch meeting across the city. Harrison was already busy with other things, so I offered to take some important papers to a client's office downtown. When I walked outside the building, Tyler was leaning casually against his car again, hands in his jacket pockets, waiting like he knew I would come out. Need a ride? He asked with a smile that was both nervous and warm. I should have said no. I should have kept professional distance, set up proper boundaries, and protected both of us from problems. But instead, I found myself nodding and walking toward the passenger door he had already opened for me. We drove in that same, comfortable silence that had grown between us. Neither of us rushed to fill it with unnecessary talking. The city passed by outside the windows. Familiar streets looked different somehow with him beside me. "Have you thought about what I said?" he asked eventually, his voice gentle, not pushing. "I've thought about little else," I admitted, surprising myself with my honesty. He nodded slowly, and I turned to look at him properly. "And I'm terrified, Tyler, not of you, but of what admitting any of this might mean, of what it might cost, of how foolish I might look. To whom?" he asked simply. That question stopped me. To whom did I need to explain anything? My husband had been gone for 5 years. My children were grown adults living their own lives. My friends and co-workers knew nothing about this private conversation. The only person judging me was myself. To myself, I suppose, I answered quietly. "Then maybe," he said gently, "you should think about being kinder to yourself. Think about the fact that maybe you deserve to feel something again, even if it doesn't make logical sense on paper." After I delivered the papers, Tyler didn't drive me straight back to the office. Instead, he pulled into a quiet coffee shop on a side street I had never noticed before. "Will you have coffee with me?" he asked. "No pressure. Just talking." I agreed, and we spent the next 2 hours talking about everything and nothing. His dreams beyond working for his father's company. My abandoned dreams of traveling to places I had only read about in books. The ways we both felt trapped by expectations we had never really agreed to carry out at one point. He reached across the small table and simply placed his hand over mine. Not romantically, not possessively. Just a gesture of connection. "I'm not trying to make your life complicated," he said. "I'm simply offering you honesty and friendship if you want it. No strings, no expectations beyond that." Over the next week, we kept meeting. Quick coffees. Longer conversations in his car after work. One evening we walked through the plant gardens near my neighborhood. Each time felt like carefully removing layers I had wrapped around myself for protection, showing something raw and vulnerable, but also alive. Then one evening he asked if he could come to my home. Not for anything inappropriate, but simply to talk somewhere private, somewhere comfortable for me. I hesitated, understanding that inviting him into my personal space would mean crossing some invisible line. But I also knew that I wanted to cross it. I wanted to see what was on the other side of all this caution I had practiced for so many years. "Yes," I said. "You can come over tomorrow evening." I spent the entire next day in nervous anticipation. I cleaned my already spotless house, changed my clothes 3 times, and questioned every decision. When he arrived at exactly 7 o'clock carrying a small bag, I opened the door with hands that shook slightly. "I brought tea," he said, holding up the bag. "I remember you mentioned liking Earl Grey." That small gesture of attention, of remembering such a tiny detail from a casual conversation, touched me more deeply than I could put into words. We sat across from each other at first, keeping careful distance. Me in my familiar armchair, him on the edge of the sofa. There was space between us, but also something electric in the air, something waiting to be noticed. "I didn't come here to pressure you," he said, his voice low and careful. "I just wanted to talk without the limits of public spaces or rushed moments." I nodded, wrapping both hands around my tea mug like it could anchor me. I don't even know what to say. I spent such a long time believing that certain parts of life were simply finished for me. The part where anyone looks at me with real interest or desire. And then you appeared and did exactly that, and it has completely disrupted everything I thought I understood about my own life. Tyler leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees, his face earnest. "It's not finished, Victoria. You have no idea how remarkable you are. You carry this quiet strength, this intelligence and grace. And I suspect no one has ever really told you that. Not in the way you deserve to hear it. I looked away, swallowing against the tightness forming in my throat. That's exactly the problem, Tyler. No one ever did tell me those things. Not even my husband. Not really. We were companions, partners in running a household and raising children, but not soulmates in any romantic sense. And after he died, I convinced myself that was enough. That I didn't need to be seen in that particular way anymore. But you do, he said gently. And that's completely okay. The tears came before I could stop them. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet drops sliding down my cheeks. He didn't move toward me or reach out. He simply let the silence exist in a way that felt respectful and kind, rather than uncomfortable. After a few moments, I stood and walked to the window, watching raindrops shine on the glass. My voice came out barely above a whisper. Part of me wants to close this door, to thank you for reminding me that I still have a working heart, and then go back to my quiet, predictable life. And the other part? He asked softly from behind me. I turned around. He stayed seated, still waiting patiently for me to find my own answers. The other part wants to discover what it feels like to be desired again. To be understood, even if it's just temporary. Even if it makes no logical sense to anyone else. Tyler stood then, slowly and carefully. He didn't approach me. He simply stood on the opposite side of the room, his hands relaxed at his sides. Then let's start there. With complete honesty. No games, no set expectations. Just two people trying to feel real connection again. The room felt impossibly still, charged with possibility. I took one step forward, then another, until we stood just inches apart, close enough that I could feel warmth coming from him. I looked up, meeting his eyes directly. My voice was quiet but certain. I don't know where any of this leads. You don't have to know, he said softly. You just have to allow it to exist. And in that suspended moment, with rain falling steadily outside, the warmth of the small fire I had lit earlier making dancing shadows on the walls, I made a choice. I allowed myself to feel something I had denied for far too long. Not desire exactly, not yet. But closeness, connection, hope. The fragile beginning of something unspoken. But real. He didn't touch me beyond that moment. He simply stayed there beside me in the quiet. And somehow that was enough. It was more than enough. The days that followed felt like a slow unfolding. Not wild or overwhelming, but slow and honest. Like carefully untangling something precious that had become knotted over time. I kept moving through my world with the same routines on the outside. Morning coffee. Work at the office. Feeding Jasper before bed. But everything felt more aware, more fragile, and at the same time more vividly alive. Tyler didn't overwhelm me with attention. He didn't flood my phone with messages or try to claim my time or my thoughts. But he was present in small, meaningful ways. A good morning text. A photo of a book he thought I might enjoy. Brief calls in the evening just to hear my voice and ask about my day. And I found myself wanting that connection. Not just the attention itself, but the sincerity beneath it. The way he listened without trying to fix or change me. The way he saw beyond my carefully built surface. One Thursday evening, after a really tiring day at the office, I found him waiting once again in the parking lot. He leaned against his car, hands in the pockets of that same jacket he had worn the evening he first came to my home. You look tired, he noticed as I walked up. I'm exhausted, I smiled. But seeing you helps a lot. He opened the passenger door with the same considerate gesture I had come to expect. Come on, I'm taking you home. We didn't talk much during the drive. The silence between us had become something comfortable. A quiet refuge that didn't need filling with unnecessary words. When we arrived at my driveway, he turned off the engine but didn't get out of the car right away. "Can I ask you something?" he said, turning to face me in the dim light. "Of course," I replied, my heart suddenly beating a little faster. He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "Do you ever worry about what other people might think? About us, I mean. If they knew we were spending time together like this?" I considered his question honestly. It was something I had thought about many times in the quiet hours before sleep. "I used to worry about that constantly," I admitted. What people would say, what they would assume. But lately I've realized something. Most people are so busy living their own lives that they barely notice mine. And the ones who do notice, well, their opinions don't change how I feel inside. He smiled at that. "That's one of the things I admire about you. You're finding your way to being brave, even when it scares you." "It does scare me," I said softly. "Every single day. But I'm learning that being scared doesn't mean I have to stop living." We sat there for a long moment, neither of us in a rush to end the conversation. The streetlight cast a warm glow through the windshield, and I could hear the faint sound of wind chimes from my neighbor's porch. "Would you like to come in?" I asked, surprising myself with how natural the invitation felt. "I could make us some dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad." His face lit up with genuine pleasure. "I would love that." Inside my house, I felt a strange mixture of nervousness and comfort as I moved around my kitchen. Tyler sat at the small table near the window, watching me work. Not in a way that felt intrusive, but in a way that made me feel seen and appreciated. "Can I help with anything?" he offered. "You could set the table," I suggested, gesturing to the cabinet where I kept the plates. We worked together in easy harmony. He found the silverware without asking, and somehow knew to put out cloth napkins instead of paper ones. These small gestures of attention touched me deeply. As we ate, we talked about simpler things. He told me about a book he was reading. I shared a funny story about Jasper knocking over a plant that morning. The conversation flowed naturally, without any pressure or awkward silences. After dinner, he insisted on helping me wash the dishes. We stood side by side at the sink, him washing and me drying, and it felt remarkably domestic, remarkably normal. Like this was something we had done 100 times before. "This is nice," he said quietly. "Just being here with you like this." "It is nice," I agreed, feeling warmth spread through my chest. I didn't realize how much I missed having someone to share simple moments with. When the dishes were done, we moved to the living room. I lit the fire because the evening had turned chilly. Tyler sat on the sofa, and this time I sat beside him, not across from him. The small shift in distance felt significant, like another invisible line we were crossing together. "Tell me something about yourself that no one else knows," he said. Turning to face me. I thought about that for a moment. When I was young, maybe 25 or so, I wanted to be a writer. I used to fill notebooks with stories and poems. But life got busy with marriage and children and work, and eventually I just stopped. I haven't written anything in over 30 years. "Do you miss it?" he asked gently. "I didn't think I did," I said slowly. "But talking to you now, remembering it, I realize I do miss it. I miss that part of myself that believed in beautiful things and wanted to create something meaningful." "It's not too late," Tyler said. "You could start again." I smiled at his optimism. "Maybe. It feels strange to think about picking up something I put down so long ago." "Everything feels strange at first," he said. "That doesn't mean it's not worth doing." He reached over and took my hand, his fingers warm and gentle around mine. We sat like that for a long time, just holding hands and watching the fire. It was such a simple gesture, but it meant everything. It meant I wasn't alone anymore. It meant someone saw me and chose to stay. Victoria, he said eventually, his voice quiet but serious. I need you to understand something. This isn't just curiosity for me. It's not some temporary thing or a phase I'm going through. I genuinely care about you. About who you are as a person. I felt tears prick at my eyes again, but this time they were different. Not tears of sadness or fear, but tears of relief. Of being understood in a way I hadn't been in so long. I care about you too, I whispered. More than I thought I would. More than I think is probably wise. Why isn't it wise? He asked. I gestured vaguely between us. All the obvious reasons. The age difference. Your father being my boss. The fact that this could get complicated in ways neither of us can predict. Life is complicated, Tyler said simply. Relationships are complicated. But that doesn't make them wrong. It just makes them real. He had a point. I had spent so many years avoiding complications. Choosing safety and predictability over risk. But safety hadn't made me happy. It had just made me numb. What are you thinking? He asked, watching my face carefully. I'm thinking that I've been half alive for a very long time, I said honestly. And you're making me feel fully alive again. And that's both wonderful and terrifying. Tyler squeezed my hand gently. We don't have to figure everything out tonight. We don't have to have all the answers. We just have to be honest with each other and take things one day at a time. One day at a time, I repeated, liking the sound of that. I think I can do that. We talked for hours more, about everything and nothing. About his hopes for the future and my regrets about the past. About favorite books and childhood memories. About the ways we had both felt trapped by expectations and the courage it took to break free from them. Eventually, it got late. Tyler stood to leave, and I walked him to the door. We stood there in the hallway, neither of us quite ready to say goodbye. Thank you for tonight, he said. For letting me in. For being brave enough to try this, whatever this is. Thank you for seeing me, I replied. For reminding me that I'm still here. Still capable of feeling and wanting and hoping. He leaned forward slowly, giving me plenty of time to pull away if I wanted to. But I didn't want to. His lips brushed against my forehead in the gentlest kiss. And then he stepped back. Good night, Victoria, he said softly. Good night, Tyler. After he left, I stood at the window and watched his car drive away. Jasper rubbed against my legs, purring softly. I picked him up and held him close, feeling my heart beating strong and steady in my chest. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if this connection with Tyler would last, or if it would fade like morning mist. But for the first time in many years, I wasn't focused on the ending. I was focused on the beginning, on the possibility that life still had surprises left for me. That love, in whatever form it took, was still possible. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom feeling lighter than I had in years. As I got ready for bed, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The same face I had looked at every day for 61 years. But something in my eyes was different. There was a spark there that had been missing. A light that Tyler had somehow switched back on. I smiled at my reflection. Maybe I was being foolish. Maybe this would all end in heartbreak and regret. But maybe, just maybe, it would end in something beautiful. Something worth the risk. And that possibility was enough to make me want to wake up tomorrow and see what happened next. For the first time in a very long time, I felt truly alive. And that feeling, I realized, was worth everything.